Hey, I'm Kati Spaas, and I'm a world-renowned author and speaker on high sensitivity and a retired coach to professional artists and performers. Spotlight Stress is your guide to build confidence, find your superpower, and claim your shine. Our guest today is going to share 3 top tips for stressed moms who feel overwhelmed. I'm one of those. So, Elizabeth, please tell me what to do because literally my brain is exploding from all the sound and all the noise and all the chaos and drama around me from my 2 little kids. And it's so hectic. And sometimes I feel like I'm drowning. So, please, how do we keep all these balls in the air and still feel completely zen?
Well, like that's a heavy thing to figure out, right? I can already feel it through your tone, how you're just like, you feel like you're drowning. And so many moms that I talk to feel the same way. So, my name is Elizabeth. I am a stress coach for moms. I have 4 kids, 10 and under. So I'm living this with you. I'm experiencing the noise and the chaos, right there in the midst with all of you mamas. And I help overwhelmed moms reduce mental stress so they can respond with patience and calm. So that is what I do. I teach you proactive strategies and in the moment strategies when you're overwhelmed and you just like feel like you're about to explode and you have these big emotions that come out in unpleasant ways. And this is what I'm here for. So we're going to talk about tips that I can suggest, something that you can do today to implement to feel better.
I am so excited because those emotions do come out. And then, especially in my case, I've really lived my own transformation. I know the techniques, I know what to do. I've implemented it, I've done everything. But then when you get to that certain point when, you're sleep deprived, you're stressed, you're emotional, you're exhausted. Like I was just sharing with you behind the scenes, like I'm so tired. I could barely, pull myself together to get here for our conversation. Couldn't even wash my hair and blow out my hair because my arms hurt. I'm so tired. And I thought, you know what? That is exactly the reason why we need to do this interview today, because I can imagine that just like me, there's a lot of high achieving, high performing moms that just, have been living a very conscious path and have been taking some steps. But just, when you're on survival mode, it's a lot harder. And that's what I noticed for myself. When I'm sleep deprived, it's really hard for me to, to how I don't even know how to say it. You see, there, my brain
To
just,
function.
yeah, to
Yeah. And
function.
to
There you
think. And let me explain to you why. And that is one of the things that I do teach my mamas. So, um, I want to tell you a little bit about the human brain and the stress, what it does to our brain. And so, we have 3 main parts of our brain that help us kind of like make choices, decisions, and like therefore behaviors. And so we have our frontal lobe right here. It's our thinking brain, I call it. And this is the part of the brain that helps us to logically think, problem solve, make good choices, do the hard, right thing, right? The mature part of our brain. This is where we learn new skills and just we're patient and calm when we are in that part of the brain. But when we experience some sort of stress or a threat to our brain, we shift to our emotional part of the brain, which is like right in the center over here. And when we shift to the emotional part of the brain, it shuts off our thinking brain, our positive, problem solving, logical part of the brain. And so when we are in the emotional part of the brain, this is when we're like triggered, when we're overwhelmed a little bit, when we feel a little bit out of control. And this is when it comes out in our tone and we're kind of rude and disrespectful and snappy and just short with our family members. We know it's not doesn't feel good. We don't like it, but we can't kind of like, we want to snap out of it, but we can't because this part of the brain that helps us make positive choices is shut off. And if we continue to stay in this emotional part of the brain and the stress builds up with like more things to do, unmet needs, extra overwhelm, extra chaos, we eventually shift to our survival part of the brain, which is our fight, flight, or freeze.
The
This
reptilian
is,
brain, we call it.
yeah, this is where like the toddler is melting down and screaming on the floor. But for us adults, this is when we either like completely freak out, like we just lose it, not just like, oh, a little bit, like we completely scream and freak
So
out. Yes, or we just like completely shut down. We're like freeze. We're like I can't. Like it's just too much. I need to leave. I can't function. Or we like escape. We're like, I'm done with it. I'm not even dealing with it. I'm so out of it because it feels too much. It's too much emotions, too much stress that builds up in your brain. So I always start out with my mamas with unmet basic needs. And you mentioned you feel sleep deprived. When we are sleep deprived, and we all need sleep to function, right? And when we're sleep deprived, that creates a threat or a stress response in our brain. And it shifts us from our thinking brain to our emotional part of the brain. That's why when you're sleep deprived, you're a lot more triggered. You're a lot more frustrated. You're a lot more short. Your tolerance window is so much lower. And if for a highly sensitive mom, for me and for you, that is like you're even more sensitive to sleep deprivation maybe than someone else, right? And so your tolerance for how much you can handle throughout the day, things not going your way, the window gets lower and lower. So one of the first basic things that I teach my mamas when it comes to stress management is getting sleep, right? I know it's important. We all know it's important. Yet somehow, oftentimes, we don't prioritize it. We stay on our phones scrolling too late. You know, we commit to too many things and we stay up too late. And we, like, we just do things, right? Like, so we stay up too late and then we don't get enough sleep. And then we're the next day, we're really struggling to show up in the best self that we can.
Yeah, and it's really funny because that's always the thing I used to teach my clients in like basic lesson number one, how that brain works. So it's interesting that once you're at that point, like to me, it feels like I've been in survival mode for quite some time now. Um, it's been like just like a few hours of sleep during months, and I really need my entire family. If we have like less than 7 hours of sleep, we're like monsters, you know. Godzilla is nothing compared to us. We will eat you for breakfast, you know. That's how cranky we are when we're sleep deprived. So to me it feels like at this point, you know, even our marriage is under, yeah, under the loop. It's so
Yeah,
difficult to just maintain that peace and calm towards each other as well, both of us, of course, because we're both exhausted, and that makes it
yeah.
really hard.
Yes, it does, because the part of the brain that helps you make positive choices and problem solve and come up with a solution with your spouse and help them feel seen, heard, and understood is shut off, right? Because that stress response, because your brain is focused on the lack of sleep. It sees it as a threat because it's a basic need, and it doesn't take any energy to focus on emotional regulation and
Mm,
problem solving. It just can't, because lack of sleep is essential. Like that's a basic need for survival. And problem solving and emotional regulation isn't a basic need for problem solving. So your brain doesn't take its energy for that. It's focused on what it sees is super important in this time. And yeah, when we're sleep deprived, we're like not even ourselves. We
No.
make these choices and decisions, and we say and do things that we literally regret later. You're like, who is this person? And when we're hungry, add sleep deprivation plus hunger, it's like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, well, I'm never hungry because I eat all day long, so that's not an issue. But yeah, I feel you. I feel you. I think that's interesting because like recently we were together for 10 years. So we were going to Ibiza to celebrate. And when we just arrived there, it was so interesting because my entire body was on overload. It was awful. We had awful nights. It's been such a chaotic and hard period for me as a person, for us as a couple, as parents, it was really rough these past months. So when we got to Ibiza, I had such aching back pain. I had a lot of pain. And one of my girlfriends, because we invited two of our friend couples to come with us, and one of my girlfriends, she came out of the toilet and it was flushing while I was entering the toilet. And I am quite brain noise sensitive, so my daughter was crying a lot, and she has like power in her voice, so that really hurts my brain. So when we got to Ibiza and that first day she came out of the toilet while it was flushing and I was going in, it was like my head was exploding literally. It really hurt my brain. I could not stand the slightest sounds or noises around me. And then day five, when we were leaving to come back home again, my back didn't hurt anymore. And my head was functioning a little bit normal again, even though we had sleep deprivation there as well. You don't go to Ibiza just for the beautiful beaches. You want to spend time with your friends, have a little drink. Um, it was so much fun, but it was just really, confrontational to me that was really hurting my brain, like physically. So my daughter is feeling better now, so she's crying a lot less, which helps a lot to me. But when you're stuck in a phase like that, when your child is not feeling great and not good in her own skin, and growing pains or other things that are going on that they can't tell you yet, being just so young, and then it can really damage you physically, but also, I noticed that mentally I'm not as sharp, I'm not as focused, I'm tired, I don't feel like working, I'm exhausted. So that brings your whole energy and your confidence down as well. You start to feel less secure, and yeah, even a little bit depressed at times because you can't even do your own passions anymore. And I think that is like a little negative spiral that you get stuck in. So, what would you tell me if I'm your client? I know what I would tell my own clients. So, I want to hear from you because you're specialized in this specific area. What would you tell me if I was your client? The first step to, I don't know, manage that stress so that, it's not all coming in that hard and that I don't feel so overwhelmed, but that I can reduce my stress levels and start functioning like a little bit like normal again.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first thing is just recognizing where you're at, right? What is not working, because that is awareness, right? Step one. So with my clients, I always have them journal and write down like everything that feels heavy and hard in life. Oftentimes, we try to keep it all inside, right? Keep track of all these things and all these commitments and this going on, this, and it's all stays in our mind. And that's what creates so much mental overload and stress. And that will shift us to emotional part of the brain, and that's when we tend to react, add sleep deprivation and hunger and just overcommitment, like it all just, that's when we explode, right? And other people's emotions and triggers, right? And so first step one is like, I want you to brain dump everything that feels heavy. Okay. We got to look at your life and see what is not working, like your schedule, what is going on, your commitments. Oftentimes, we're just overcommitted. We're trying to do too many things at once. Sometimes we're people pleasers. Sometimes we just think that's what everybody does and we just need to fit in, right? Sometimes we just think we could handle it, but then our body and our mind is showing us we can't. So, being aware of where you are right now, what's heavy, like mentally and physically, and what is not working, like, is step one. And then we look at your schedule and we're like, okay, we probably need to delegate. We probably have to delete some because, in order to be less stressed and be less overwhelmed, we need to do less. And we often try to do too much. And that is what pushes us into that extra overwhelm and stress. We don't even know where to start. There's just so much going on.
Yeah, I get that. And that is one of the things that, my family and my husband were saying, like, you always make it too hard. You want to do so many things at the same time. And that's true. I'm a very driven, ambitious woman, and I love to have a lot of exciting projects going on. So that means my horses, my family, dogs, my babies, my work, writing my book, doing my show, but then also renovating our house at the same time and doing
That's a lot.
like so I did.
I am listening to you and I'm getting overwhelmed.
Yeah,
Just listing all those things.
so I have been shifting, and I have to say, for someone like me, who likes to do all those things, that was really hard at the beginning. But the space, the relief of having less on your plate, on feeling less of those heavy pounds on your shoulders, that 10,000 pound gorilla that you can just slowly release a little bit. And to be
Yeah.
honest, it feels good, it feels empowering, and even more so, I was feeling really stuck with certain things, like for my show, for example, and it gave me new, fresh ideas to move forward. So I thought, that is interesting, this space is really working for me. So sometimes it's very confrontational, but I can, like, I feel what you're saying because I did that and it did bring me a lot of peace of mind. And, I feel like now I'm calmer again. My whole household, so even the dogs are a little bit more calm. The kids are calmer, and it's just a lot more relaxed for me in the house. So, yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the things I want to mention is that, like, you listed a lot of things that are happening in your life right now, and they're all important, right? But we go through seasons in our lives where we kind of have to shift what is more of a priority right now. We cannot literally have everything balanced all the time. Some of the seasons we lean into work a little bit more. Other seasons we lean into, connecting in our marriage more. Other seasons you learn, lean more into, like you said, renovating your house. You pick what is the priority for the next 3 months, let's say, for this season of life. If everything is important, nothing is important, right? And that's when you get stretched way too thin. That's when you get too overwhelmed, you get stressed out, and then you're freaking out and yelling at your family when they're not even the problem, right? Like, the problem is sometimes our own mindset that's holding us back, where we feel like we have to do it all because somebody somewhere, is a super mom, which they're not, right? But they portray that image. So we feel this pressure that we should be able to do all these things. And it's showing up in negative ways in our health. Like you said, like it was showing up in your body, right?
Oh yeah, it's really crippling me. It's knocking me down, literally, literally.
Yeah, I would write this quote down. And maybe you've heard it before, but write it down again. If you don't pick a day to rest, your body is going to pick it for you.
Yeah.
And it is true. It can get to a point where our health is just completely crumbling. I used to work in physical therapy, and I had a manager a physical therapist. She was my manager in the clinic. And as a new mom, I would watch her. She had kids in school, and it seemed like she was doing it all. She was, a manager at work. She was working out. She was organizing these things. Her kids were doing traveling, basketball. She was like committed to so many things. And I remember thinking, how does she do it all? I even asked her. She's like, I don't know. I just kind of like do it all. And as I was working there, I saw this happen. Her health started to crumble. And it started with the fact that she couldn't sleep at night. Literally could not sleep. She would go to bed, but her brain could not shut off and she couldn't sleep. And when you can't sleep, you can't think clearly. Your brain cannot make good choices. You cannot concentrate. She started making lots of mistakes at work. Then she would go to all these doctors trying to figure out what's wrong. Everything came back normal because physically she was considered healthy. She ate healthy, she exercised, but her body was shutting down from all that overwhelm and constantly go, 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 go. She literally had to stop working completely and like focus on just, she was in her 30s, to like just her health for it to, come back to life. And I just want to let you know, mama, if you're listening, the listener who's listening, like just be aware of this. Don't wait till that long. Like, recognize this now, that if you don't take care of yourself, if you don't slow down, you're gonna get to that point eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been to that point like several times in life. So it's a fun, yeah, I love the way you talk about those seasons. It's about finding a good balance to shift it a little bit and to slide from one topic or one focus to the other. And it creates more space for other things to have a little breather as well. It doesn't mean you stop working when you focus on your relationship or renovations or anything else, but it does mean that it's there, but it's not constantly activated in your brain, because especially for us highly sensitive, empowered women, um, yeah, there's just a lot of balls that we're keeping up in the air. And what I've noticed is that we train our brain to constantly shift. We have to be so flexible, going from one thing to the other, from the kids to the laundry to work to the book to the show to real estate to renovation to the dogs to making food to taking care of your body. It's all those things that you have to keep in your mind. But then the problem is, when you have a moment to relax, your brain keeps doing this. So I have experienced, like you said, that at night, those few nights when in the evening my daughter was asleep, I was like this in bed. Like, I could not shut it off because I had gone so much overboard. Because that was new to me. I knew how to do all that before. But then since my second child came, it's like I have to reinvent myself completely again, doing all the same things that worked before. But you just have to do it again on a whole new level. So I always say new level, new devil, but it's true. It's a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I can give you a quick tip, maybe outside of the moment, but for all you highly sensitive mamas and people that are listening, this will be really helpful. I don't know if you do this, but it is turn off the notifications on your phone.
I do.
They are such a distraction. That
Yeah.
is one of the things that I teach, like basic things that I teach my mama is like turn off all the social media notifications, any of the dings, like even my messages, unless it's my husband or my mom, none of them, no noise, no vibration, nothing. Unless I like open my phone, then I see the little red mark. And actually my social media, not even like unless I open
No.
the app, then
Yeah.
I see somebody message me.
Me
So
too.
then it doesn't distract me from life and doesn't pull me in multiple different directions.
Because if you see that one red dot, I mean, I have to look. I'm
Yeah.
so curious. I have to look.
It's a
So I don't do that.
dopamine hit.
No, I only do that with WhatsApp, for example, because that's for my family and for my close friends. So that's the only play. I don't even do it for my emails. Plus, I have all my social media apps and my mail and everything. I have that on the second page of my phone. So on the first page, there's other stuff, but nothing that keeps my mind going. There's the weather app, and there's Google for if I do like to look up a lot because I am always thinking. But that just the things that might trigger me in between, I do keep that on the second page so that I'm not, because otherwise I will check it every 3 seconds because I feel I have to do something,
Yeah, yes. It's hard to just get still and just shut our brain down. And I wanted to circle back to another tip that we talked. This is our third one, right? Out
Yeah.
of all the ones, is asking for help. I know sometimes it's hard for many of us. Sometimes we feel like we should be able to do it all. Just because you can physically do it all, that doesn't mean you should and that it's serving you. Okay. And oftentimes we see as asking for help as a sign of weakness or and that I'm failing if I'm asking for help. But I want you to shift your mindset and see it from a different lens. Is I ask for help to support myself and make things easier, to make life easier. Okay? So you can try to do it all and you might succeed for a little bit, but you'll get overwhelmed, burned out, and we talked about the side effects of that. Or you can make things a little bit easier for yourself and ask for help. And when you have that thought, is like, oh, that means I'm failing, that feels I'm weak, you tell yourself, no, I'm asking for help in order to support myself and make life easier.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And what would you say, like, when you have that moment with all your children? I mean, four, my God, I can't think about it. But that is chaos. That is hectic. That is a lot of noise,
Three
Sound.
boys. I have
Oh
three
my
boys.
God,
They're so
brutal,
loud. They're so
brutal.
loud.
So when you have all that chaos going on around you, and it feels like your head is going to explode and you are about to explode, is there like a technique that you use that you can share with us? For example, what I teach my clients, what I use for myself is just like some simple breathing in and out my stomach, 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. I don't even have to count it anymore, but when I just take a slow breath, my brain recognizes it and it balances my different brain levels. So that works really well for me, but maybe you have something completely different that you say, like, this is something in the moment of hectic and craziness that you can do that is really easy to implement.
Yeah. So one of the things that I do teach is that if at all possible in that moment, if everyone is safe and you're not like driving or anything, see if you can remove yourself from the situation. So if my kids are at home, I strap my baby into the high chair, give her some snacks, send the boys to different rooms or give them something to watch so they're not getting into a fight with each other. And I will go to my room if it's cold outside or step outside. And I have to remove myself from the situation because if it builds up, I will blow up. I
Yeah,
know that about myself because I'm highly sensitive, because I naturally get overwhelmed and overstimulated quickly. I need to remove myself. Okay. If that's not possible, I do deep breathing as well. Like you said, deep breathing is really helpful because that calms your nervous system and it sends a safety signal to your brain and it helps you shift back to your thinking part of the brain. And that is the part of the brain that helps you stay more calm and grounded. Okay. So taking deep breaths and reminding myself this is hard and this is frustrating. This is hard. This is chaotic and I can handle it. Right? If I tell myself I can't do this, this is too much, because that is my automatic thought. That's what I want to say to myself. And I catch myself saying this. This is too much. I can't handle this. I just can't do this. I have to catch myself like, this is hard. This is
yeah,
frustrating. And I can do this and I can handle it. And so giving myself a positive affirmation, doing deep breathing. If I can remove myself from the situation, I do. I also visualize sometimes a calm and peaceful place That also helps me ground myself. Actually, I created a page for your listeners, and on there, there's a resources where they can download my PDF with 5 ways to reduce overwhelm right now, like and calm your brain. And it has like 5 helpful tips on there. And so there's a few more tips on there that can be
That's
helpful for
lovely.
you.
That's really kind of you. We
Yeah.
will share that link also, so that they can find that and use your top tips. And I remember when I was working with one of my first clients 5 years ago, and she was telling me she had also 2 small children. When she came back from her busy job, she said, I get home and then actually I'm tired from my workday. And then I'm trying to cook a meal, but then those 2 children are harassing me, at my leg, like, mom, 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 trying to get my attention, which I get. She said, but then, my stress levels keep getting up and then I explode. And afterwards, I feel really bad about myself. So it drains me even more. So the tip I gave her is, when you get back from work, before you get out of the car, or before you pick up the kids, or before you enter the house, just take like 1 to 3 minutes to do like a small breathing exercise, or to ground yourself, or to just be, so that your stress levels can really come down again, because that goes really fast. um, so that was one part of the equation, but the other part was like, spend first, for example, 20 minutes with your children, with your full devoted energy, and not distracted, not your phone, but like completely present. And then explain them, before you do that, like, mommy's going to spend time with you now, and then she's going to cook, and you will have to spend some time together, or watching TV, or alone time, whatever you like. But then it's mommy's time to cook. So that it's a very clear framework, for them, so that they can really see what is happening now, what is happening after, and that there are clear boundaries. And so she found that that really helped her to stay calm in the first place, because her resilience was a lot higher when she entered the house to begin with. But then also her children were sort of fulfilled when she started cooking. So those were like a few small things that did really help move through that process. So I'm sure that
Yeah.
you have like
I
a bunch of examples of those.
Yes, what you said, that's what I would tell her actually. Especially the first tip that you said is like calm your mind and body before you enter. Because let's say, and I teach this for my mamas, if it's possible, the season they're in, to get up in the morning before your kids and have some calming, grounding practice that calms your nervous system. So when your kids do get up, you're happy to see them and not just frustrated and agitated by all their needs. So if you wake up, our stress level is usually at its highest. That's why if you wake up to the last minute, you're really reactive, right?
Yeah,
So if you wake up and your stress level is like an 8 and 10 is your max, you don't have much wiggle room in there. And so you blow up pretty quickly. But if you wake up and you have some alone time, have some coffee and peace, maybe even do a 5-minute meditation and just sit in silence. For us, highly sensitive people, we need that silence. We absolutely need that calm, peace, and silence to calm our nervous system. And you go down to like a 3 or a 2, and then your kids do get up and they do fight. And there is, let's say, some chaos, but your tolerance window is so much higher. Same thing, like you said, when she gets from work, let's say she's at a 9 because things were stressful and tense at work, but she comes home and she stays in her car for a little bit, for 5 minutes, to do some deep breathing, meditation, visualize a peaceful, calm place. She gets down to a 4, to a 5 even. She goes back to be with her kids. There's just so much, so much more tolerance, because
yeah,
your nervous system isn't overloaded. You
mm,
actually calmed it down.
yeah. That's a huge difference, especially for us, because that is something we are very sensitive about. Just like we're also sensitive to feeling what our child needs, not just our children, but everyone around us. We're so sensitive to feel other people's needs. So that's also a huge blessing when it comes to your kids. I mean, I feel like that's really a nice part of this character trait. So thank you so much, Elizabeth, for your wisdom and your amazing tips, and for sharing that page that, our watchers, our viewers, they can go and have a look and get maybe even more tips from you. So that would be really cool. I hope they'll follow you because it's amazing advice that you're sharing. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.